First of all, I just want to welcome everybody again. This is the kickoff to our three-part webinar series, Guide to the Holidays. We are also going to be meeting next Tuesday and the following Tuesday, the same time. So be sure to continue joining us. But we are really happy and excited to be kicking off today with Dr. David Zuniga and Ariel Schultz. Are with us this morning, and we're going to be hearing from them about discovering your true self and enhancing relationships. But before I give it over to them, I just want to do some housekeeping, remind you that we are the Texas Oncology Foundation, and we are dedicated to providing support to cancer patients in the communities where they live, work, and receive treatment. And one of those ways that we get to do that is through our Survive and Thrive programming, much like this webinar or our virtual camps that you've probably been a part of as well. Quick tech housekeeping for this Zoom platform. This is a webinar, and so you can see and hear us, but we cannot see and hear you. So attendees, it is really crucial that you utilize that chat with us. If you want to talk with the speakers, you can also use the Q&A function to submit your questions. If you are having any technical difficulties, like maybe your audio's off, you can always use the dial-in function. That is also on that Zoom menu. When you click on the audio phone, it'll give you the dial option and it'll give you the phone line for that. If you are having issues with your video and seeing our presenters, sometimes it's just best to exit and then rejoin the webinar session. That'll typically fix those issues. Again, utilize that Q&A and the chat with any questions or comments you have for our speakers. And at the end, we are going to host a Q&A time. Lastly, we are recording this session. So if you are wanting to rewatch it or share it or encourage somebody else to watch it, that will be available. And everyone who registered will get an email directly from us. All right, like I mentioned, we have Dr. David Zuniga with us. He is a licensed psychologist, and his private practice is in Austin. He has participated with our foundation a bunch, so he might be a face that you recognize, but we're really glad to have you back with us today, Dr. Zuniga. And then a new face for all of us is Ariel Schultz, and we are so glad that she is joining Dr. Zuniga with us. She is a licensed clinical social worker, and she has served clients as a psychotherapist for almost 30 years, and she is in Arizona. And so we are glad to have you both with us, and I am going to give it over to you guys to start.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay, just to double check? I'm so excited to be here. I'll just say briefly, the Texas Oncology Foundation, I just love everything that they do. If you're new to them, please check out their programming, their archived stuff, their upcoming series. They're just great. And I also want to say I'm excited to be presenting with my close personal friend, Ariel Schultz. I'm just excited to hear what she has to say and really excited to be talking to with all of you. Again, the title of our talk is Discovering Your True Self and enhancing relationships. And of course, we're thinking about this amidst the cancer community. And I'll just say briefly that our talk today is meant to help address some of the unique challenges of being a cancer patient, a cancer caregiver, and a cancer survivor. I think everybody on this audience and community knows that, you know, once you complete your treatment, it doesn't mean your journey in cancer stops, whether you're a patient or a caregiver. So, and cancer, we talk about post-traumatic stress, and there's also post-traumatic growth, thinking about how we respond to trauma and difficulty. So when we're talking today about discovering your true self and enhancing relationships, Ariel and I are really trying to focus on, you know, enhancing your relationships, discovering your true self amidst difficulty. And so we're focusing on kind of three key points. The first is we want to talk about integrative medicine. What is that? And I'll say more about this, but we're going to be talking about research-based brain techniques to understand yourself, to help discover yourself, and explore your connection between mind, body, spirit, discovering who you really are, even amidst trauma and difficulty. And then Ariel's going to share a lot of insights about recognizing what drains our energy, how to restore ourselves. We'll talk about self-care, but being more in authentic relationships, which Ariel is an expert at. So just really delighted to be here with all of you today. I'll say first, so I used to be a professor of integrative medicine at MD Anderson. And what is integrative medicine, especially related to the oncology and hematology community? So in oncology, of course, we have many types of research-based care. Chemotherapy, radiation, immunotherapy, hormone therapy, different surgeries, all kinds of things. There's all these other treatment modalities out there. Some of them do have a good body of research. And so we call those other modalities, if they're supported by research, integrative medicine. And we take these other modalities and integrate them in traditional cancer care, traditional medical care. Some of these modalities, for example, when I was at the integrative medicine department at MD Anderson, which was a few years ago, we offered things like acupuncture, massage therapy, music therapy. Like movement practices are so powerful psychologically and biologically. Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, lots of things that I'm probably forgetting, and also meditation. So I was kind of the meditation / mindfulness guy at MD Anderson. And so one of the things we'll be talking about today is training your brain via meditation to understand yourself, your true self, authentically who you are, even amidst trauma, learning a little more about training our brain with the mind-body connection, and then, to help out with ourselves, our energy, and have authentic, healthy, healing relationships amidst trauma. So, when we talk about meditation, it has a lot of kind of cultural baggage, and people make it into some kind of esoteric, rarefied thing. Meditation is just your everyday life. It's a way to train your brain. The gentleman, the neuroscientist John Kabat-Zinn from MIT, who really helped, what we call mindfulness, originated from ancient wisdom traditions and really all over the world. Every system of religion, philosophy, theology has some type of practice or idea for slowing down, being calm, being kind, and working on being our authentic self so we can show up in the world the way we want to be. Every system of philosophy and religion has something along these lines. These are universal human practices. So there was this neuroscientist from MIT, and he was doing yoga and mindfulness meditation, and he said, what if we started using this for chronic pain patients? And that's how what we call mindfulness-based stress reduction was born, which is recommended by the American Medical Association and other organizations to help deal with chronic pain. In other words, what you do internally with your brain can transform your experience of pain and relationships. I just want to, because we have so much material to share, and I want to hear from Ariel, so I'll speak a little more quickly, but I want to start out with an experiential exercise. I want to try a kind of universal multicultural practice, and so I want to do a quick immersion in training your brain. We'll just do a little kind of brain training exercise. Real quick, I'll just invite you to maybe you might have a little fatigue, lingering pain, that kind of stuff, but get your body comfortable as you can. Maybe you're on a couch or a chair. Maybe you're even lying down. Just get your body as comfortable as you can. You can leave your eyes open or closed. Meditating with your eyes open kind of is nice because it makes your meditation a transferable skill set. Meditation is something you can do anytime, anywhere, for any period. So you might like to meditate with your eyes open. Sometimes if we close our eyes, it helps us concentrate and focus more, but then we can also fall asleep. But then maybe you need your sleep. So get yourself comfortable. I'll ring the bell 3 times, and then we'll do a quick guided meditation. I'll just say briefly, if you Find yourself distracted, that's okay. Distractions are a normal part of life. Just bring yourself back to your practice. And we'll begin. It'll be a guided meditation the entire time, and we'll start right now. As we begin our meditation, take a moment to relax and notice your breathing. Just breathing in and breathing out, breathing at your own pace, breathing at your own rhythm. And as you're breathing in and out, if you find yourself distracted, that's okay. Distractions are a normal part of life. Just bring yourself back to your breathing. And as you're breathing in and out, paying attention to your body and noticing what your body is experiencing. Sometimes we can hold a lot of emotions in our body. We can hold a lot of stress and tension. For now, just see if you can be kind to your body. Just see if you can give your body a moment to relax and listen to what your body is revealing to you. And listen to your emotions as you would listen to a good friend. And as you're breathing in and out, noticing too any thoughts that might pop into your field of awareness. There's nothing special you need to think or feel. Just giving yourself the spaciousness to slow down and to relax. And any thoughts that come into your mind, you can just let them go, like clouds in the sky. We don't control the clouds. We can't make them come, and we don't always make them go. But if we just let them exist, they will just drift across the sky of our mind. And just letting thoughts come as they may and go as they will, and just being attentive and kind to yourself, listening to yourself, and letting yourself relax. All right. So, because we're on kind of an abbreviated time frame, maybe at the end with a little question and answer, I'd love to hear how you all found that exercise. That was just a very quick, probably about a minute and a half exercise. But, thinking a little bit about how we train our brain and what's going on in our brain, both for our own internal experience and for relationships. The first thing to know about the brain is the adult brain on average, like, we've got people on this call, each of us has a brain. Your brain, my brain, on average weighs about 2 to 3 pounds. And yet it burns over 20% of our calories. Like, the brain is the engine of our body. And, it's remarkable that something so tiny to our overall size consumes so much energy. If you're a professional chess player playing chess, you probably burn as much calories just through pure thinking as if you had gone through a 5-mile run. So, to plan, if we're anxious, if we're nervous, if we're afraid, if we're angry, that can end up hurting us energy-wise. And what often happens if we think about the environment, mind, body, brain connection, there's a stimulus for our environment, some kind of trigger. Could be something on social media, could be a message you get in your portal from your oncologist, could be a politician, something on Facebook. There's some kind of thing that happens. And here's the thing, if we're not careful, we tend to repeat the same thoughts over and over again about 90% of the time. So if you're angry at a politician or a nurse, if you're frustrated by a neighbor or a relationship in your life, we tend, if we're not careful, to have the same, present company excluded, to have the same thoughts over and over and over again. And then We can start, if we're not careful, feeling really sad, feeling really anxious, feeling depressed. Our thoughts can impact our relationships in positive and negative ways. One thing that happens too is, just like an athlete uses different parts of our body, someone who's meditating starts training their brain to use different parts of their brain. A brain that isn't well trained can sometimes get us in trouble. What happens with the brain is we start using certain parts of our brain, the amygdala, for example. Then we start producing certain neurotransmitters like adrenaline, cortisol. Those neurotransmitters related to stress start having a downstream effect in our body. So we might start having rapid heartbeat. We might start having increased skeletal muscle tension, which if you're a professional boxer would be great. But if you're trying to be kind to your spouse, well, that's not necessarily so helpful. We have shallow breathing, we have decreased oxygen rate. And then, and what we're also talking about is, you know, the kind of, and you've probably all heard of this, but the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system of, you know, our fight or flight response or our relaxation response. When when a stressor comes in from our environment, maybe we misunderstand our partner. Maybe we think they're insulting us when they're not. Maybe we thought they were going to go to a chemo appointment and they misunderstand. There's some kind of trigger from our environment. And if you're relaxed or if you're stressed, the sympathetic, what we call our fight or flight response, increases when we're stressed, or when we feel like we're in danger, including emotional in danger. And this is kind of the part of our body that we were talking about a second ago, and it prepares us to fight or take action. It doesn't necessarily prepare us, the sympathetic nervous system, to slow down and relax and listen to what our partner says. So one of the nice things is you can trigger what we call our parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us slow down. It lowers our heart rate. It lowers our skeletal muscle tension. It lowers our perspiration. It helps calm our body because the brain and the body are one. There's no separation. If you calm your body, it helps to calm your brain. If you calm your brain, it helps to calm your body. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for what Ariel has to share, but something to think about too. We tend to be in the same kind of environments. We tend to expose ourselves to the same things on social media and all this kind of stuff. We get in cognitive and emotional patterns. We have often, if we're not careful, we can have these same thoughts and emotions over time. And then we can kind of start to lose ourselves. We can kind of start to not pay attention to ourselves, not pay attention to our partners. And then the danger, and especially when things are stressful, like maybe we're going through cancer treatment, or maybe we've completed our cancer treatment and now we're making a new adjustment to this strange new normal world. And so we want to avoid getting caught in behavioral patterns or interpersonal patterns with the people in our lives that may not serve us well. So what you're doing when you're meditating, you're doing often a couple different things. You're learning to slow down and watch your mind, and that can help you learn to figure out who you really are. What are your values? What are your beliefs? What do you need in a relationship? What do you want in a relationship? This type of meditation is often called mindfulness. There's another family of meditation techniques that I love, and they involve generating compassion, generating loving kindness, generating what we might call positive psychology traits related to relationships. And the research has shown, and there's a lot of exciting research, so there's all kinds of different meditation techniques that provide different benefits for us, like awareness of our thoughts, body relaxation, these kind of things. Meditations on relationships, on compassion, on loving kindness. Lots of forms of meditation. Through fMRI studies, we can measure how our brain changes in response to meditation. Just like our body, we can measure how it changes in relation to exercise. But of all the different kinds of meditations, physical relaxation, mindfulness, learning about our thoughts and emotions, meditations on loving kindness, meditations on compassion produce the most neurological change the fastest. So I want to wrap up in just a few minutes, but I want to say that to me, as someone who works a lot in the oncology field, it says something neurologically very positive about our species, about humanity, that of all the different things we can do with our brain, training our brain to meditate on things, training our brain to have mindfulness, insight into our thoughts and emotions. We can train our brain to help us relax. For example, when I used to be at MD Anderson, we have a program where, and I've done this myself, even with people who are brand new to meditation, for certain outpatient surgeries, instead of doing general anesthesia, which kind of puts you to sleep, numbs your pain, and gives you amnesia so you don't remember what happened, at MD Anderson, and I think they still do this, we've done it for years, I was one of the people who do this, for outpatient surgeries, port placements, biopsies, we do a little bit of lidocaine right at the point of incision, but the main form of meditation was the sound of my voice, inviting you to relax, to relax. So you can literally train your brain to go through surgery. And the patients who did this at MD Anderson, and I've done this myself, report less pain, less side effects, higher satisfaction, with the surgery itself. So your brain is probably the most powerful muscle that you have in your body, and it can do amazing things both physically, and one of the best things we need for relationships is taking care of ourselves. When you take care of yourself, you're better able to show up for other people. I'm going to offer a few more thoughts at the end, and I'm really excited to hear what Ariel has to say, but I also just want to emphasize fMRI studies show too that even, meditation is modular. It's something you can do anytime, anywhere, but also one of the benefits of meditation is meditation on loving kindness. I want to say specifically, you can get incredible changes very, very quickly. And studies show that even showing a picture of someone you care about, these are my daughters in our backyard when they were very little. Now they're teenagers learning to drive. But anyways, even just looking at a picture of someone you care about generates neurotransmitters in your brain that help deal with pain, which is something we knew at MD Anderson. So your brain is a powerful ally to get to know yourself so you can also show up with your partner. By the way, a special little pro tip I like to share, meditating with your partner, literally one of the best things you can do for your relationship. So we're going to talk more during the Q&A. I'm honored to be here, and I can't wait to hear what my friend Ariel has to say. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, David. I really enjoyed what you had to say, and want to get more into, all these things about enhancing our relationships, because, as we're aware, the diagnosis of cancer can really affect every aspect of a patient and their loved one's life, right? It includes finances, job stability, daily routine, family dynamics. And so in order for us to keep up with these challenges associated with this change, you may need to really renegotiate the rules, the roles and the responsibilities you have, the future plans, your physical and emotional and intimacy needs. So it's really important to focus on how to enhance our relationships during this extremely trying time, because studies do show that being in a close relationship can dramatically improve a patient's outcome for treatment. So I want to go over some additional challenges that couples and families really have that affect their relationships due to a cancer diagnosis. For instance, there's often a misconception that the non-cancer family member does not have the right to be struggling or to express their feelings openly, and to remember that cancer is often referred to as the family experience because you are all in it together. And there's a spouse of a cancer patient who shared, quote, "I was so scared when my husband got cancer. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to help him or that he may not recover. And I was afraid to talk about my fears because I didn't want to upset him." So there's a tendency to really compare our experiences, our challenges to others, which can lead to minimizing our own experiences. And it's important to continue to keep in mind that it's a painful situation, that each person's experience is really unique and valid. So other challenges to consider are that the transition and shift in our roles can cause confusion and frustration, feelings of being overwhelmed. And this causes a change in the balance and what we call the homeostasis of the family system. And when there is that imbalance, it can affect the functioning of the system. So for instance, this can occur when the one who normally plays or usually plays the role of the nurturer in the family is the one diagnosed with cancer and has to now be in the position of receiving rather than giving, and being the one who's primarily in that nurturing caretaking role. And then the one who's not used to being in the nurturing role will have to step into that role in order to kind of keep the balance of the system functioning. And they may not always have that skill set to do that. So it goes back to kind of what David's saying about really being in tune with yourself and knowing how to manage these stressors through your inward journey, and then being able to then talk about this imbalance in our relationships and the disruption that it can occur. And the most critical way to really regain that balance is through the use of healthy communication. So what does communication mean to you, right? So communication means a lot of things to a lot of people. When I've through the years worked in the field that I have, working with couples, doing my therapy with them, it's often a question of, what is it? And a lot of people will define it in different ways. So I'm going to define it in the way that I have come as I've over the years worked with the couples. I've come up with a definition that I think encompasses sort of all the variabilities and all the factors that go into a healthy mode of communication. So it's defined as when we are able to be consistently open and honest, have a safe place with clear boundaries to be vulnerable, to talk about our feelings using assertive communication without fear of being judged or criticized. And again, that's a lot, right? That's a lot of components that go into defining healthy communication beyond the words of just what a lot of couples will say when I ask them, what does healthy communication mean to you? And often it'll be mutual respect. And I think that kind of encompasses a lot of those things when we use that definition, that there needs to be a safe place, that we need to not feel like we're being judged, that we can be open and honest, and we use what we call assertive communication. And so healthy communication really does play that key role in helping the one diagnosed with cancer and their loved ones to navigate more successfully through the challenges they face. So there are four types of communication styles, and for our purposes, we're really going to be focusing on assertive communication as we go through this. There's aggressive, passive aggressive, and passive, which are the other three forms of communication. And if you tend to use those other forms, then you may want to really work on some of the ways to be more assertive in your communication, because that will definitely help in making things more effective as you are working through different trying things and communication conflicts that you're having, and all of these things we're discussing about the disruption in your family and how we need to really renegotiate our roles. We also want to keep in mind that as we are working on our communication, that there's some things that may influence why we're running into obstacles or into things that are making it more difficult. So the first would be how communication was modeled in our family. So many of us may have grown up in a family where there was a lot of conflict avoidance. So if somebody was mad at somebody else, they just didn't talk to each other. They just avoided each other, or they maybe slammed doors, which would be more of the passive aggressive. And then, or there was somebody that was more aggressive, and they would shut everybody down with their, verbal intimidation or anger. And so nobody really had an opportunity to share how they really felt. So our past traumas will also be a factor which can influence what triggers us and whether we go into the fight, flight, or freeze response, which David really talked about earlier and did a great job of explaining. And so we really want to go inward and figure out, how are we managing our stressors, because the coping skills of how we do that are really important. So meditation and the things that he outlined are really going to be the individual piece that we need to do to show up when we're trying to have good communication. So a final thing that's important with what can influence whether our communication is effective is the type of relationship history we have with the person we're communicating with. So whether you had a good communication in the past or not is a factor. And if you did, and you were able to, to resolve conflict pretty well prior to the diagnosis of cancer, then typically you can use those same skill sets even with the extra stressors. And if you didn't have those those set abilities to those structure and the ability to communicate effectively, it's definitely going to be even more difficult with the added added strains and stressors that you're with the diagnosis and all the things that we've talked about. So I want to talk a little bit more now about reviewing some of the practical steps to healthy communication. And so as I'm going through these, maybe you can think about, okay, where am I actually doing pretty well with these? Where are the areas I could improve on? And again, to grade yourself with a curve, because as we know, this is a very stressful time, and there's added extra things that you're coping with. So to use David's example of using self-acceptance and being kind with yourself as we go through this, but also to just say, hey, it's an opportunity for me to really assess where I'm at with this. So the first and most important thing really is to be a good listener, which is really about being fully present. And that's a lot of that mindfulness that David was talking about, as far as validating what the other person says, and through their words and through verbal and non-verbal communication. And I looked this up because I know that there's varying, percentages that people have used about what is the percentage of communication we use as a nonverbal communication. And I was surprised that it's as high as 93% is our nonverbal. And so one of the things you want to look at is you want to assess your level of comfort when someone is talking to you and they're very emotional, right? Because the arousal can happen if you aren't comfortable with your partner or your loved one getting real emotional and upset and needing to vent. Then of course, if you shut down, then that shuts down the communication. And nonverbal communication is going to show up where you just are looking away, or you're looking at your phone, or you're not really responding in a way at all that the person needs to hear. So the two types of communication languages, and just as we were talking about, is emotional. And so if somebody, again, is in their more emotional mode of wanting to vent and feeling upset, versus rational or practical, where you may be somebody who's more comfortable in general with the role of being a problem solver, the fixer type, which can, when kind of these challenges arise, if that's what you're comfortable with, it can be very frustrating because you can't fix the diagnosis of cancer. And therefore you may need to learn these other skills of being able to be more validating and present when the other person is in their more emotional mode. And if you're using these different modes of communication, these different languages of either emotional or rational or practical, then you really won't be able to solve conflict. So some of it may just be, hey, we're kind of going round and round here. I'm in fixer mode and you're in, emotional mode. And so if you need to talk about something and you're in emotional mode, you may need to say to your partner or loved one, I just need a vent. I don't need you to fix it. I just want to talk about like what I'm feeling right now. So the other thing to think about is to clarify the other's intentions when you're communicating. I use often the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I particularly focus on the 2 for couples, which is don't make assumptions and don't personalize, which are very difficult things to do at times. You want to really kind of check things out, clarify people's intentions, and especially during this very extra stressful time when everything's turned upside down and you're all trying to get your bearings, it's important to really grade people with a curve and to really believe that they're coming from a caring place, to believe that their intention is from love, even if they're responding in ways that feel harsh or critical. A research-based therapy approach that I often use with couples is called emotionally focused therapy, and was developed by Sue Johnson. And she studied the bond between partners and how it compared to the parent-infant bond. And she showed basically that there is really lots of similarities. I mean, pretty much it is similar, other than, of course, as an infant caretaker bond, that infant relies on the caretaker to survive. And so with partners, it really is that they rely on that connection and that deep bond for their relationship to survive and to feel that deeper connection. And it shows that building a safe, connected bond requires the partners to be accessible, attentive, and responsive. And so going through what each of those means, being accessible really is about showing up for your partner and being there. So if you're often somebody who is gone a lot, is watching television a lot, is kind of an escape person who doesn't want to deal with conflict, then you need to work on being more accessible. If you are accessible, but you don't really know how to be attentive with your nonverbal and verbal cues, you don't know how to be present, then we need to work on that. And then the third is to be, like I said, responsive. And that's related to the communication styles that we're going to talk. And we're going to be doing a role play a little bit later to give examples of that. So this model really focuses on the questions. Are you there for me? And are you showing up when I need you? And with what David explained and talked about, he was talking about how am I showing up as that individual? How am I showing up in the world? And with this, it's how am I showing up in my relationship specifically? And is that person showing up for me? And so those are the questions you want to really look at. So, and to add another technique, if you're going round and round with your partner with things that you can't seem to resolve conflict on, and it seems to be that you're getting into that space of one person's maybe in emotional language mode and the other person's in cognitive mode, you may want to recognize that and say, hey, let's take a time out. The best time is when you're both probably more in the logical mode, or at least understanding each other in that regard, so that you're not being as reactive with each other. And if you're both in emotional mode, that can also be a time that it can be difficult to really hear each other. So timeouts can be a very effective way to step back, to give yourself that opportunity to do some of the things that, some of the meditation, really connecting with yourself, with your inner journey, with your thoughts and feelings about what is triggering me right now, what am I really needing from this relationship, and remembering to step back maybe and remind yourself that it may be the cancer that we're probably angry about and not at each other. So the next thing we're going to model together is using iMessages. And I'm sure many of you have heard of iMessages, but I think sometimes it's not always clear about how to do that. And so we're going to use we're going to show you how to do that, hopefully effectively. So what it starts with is I feel, because I'm owning my feelings. I feel a certain way. I feel upset. I feel sad. I feel disappointed. I feel dismissed, whatever feeling I have, because of what you did, because of the certain behavior that you did. And I would appreciate so there's a solution to it. It's not just I'm coming to you with, I'm frustrated with you and I want you to feel bad about yourself. It's, hey, I'm owning this, that I feel bad. I need your help. And it's really to request a behavior change. So it uses several techniques, and one of them is reflecting back to your partner. So what you heard them say, it uses validating, like I heard you say this, and what I hear you say is this, and it uses clarification if necessary. And so the partner who's receiving, which is going to be David, they are not in the mode of trying to justify what they're hearing and why they did what they did. They're in the mode of really just listening and making sure the other person feels heard, and then coming to an agreement about whether that solution will work. Okay, so are you ready, David?
I sure
So is
am.
this, okay, so this is how you could start. So David, is this a good time for me to talk with you about a particular thing that upset me the other day and that I would like to see if we could resolve?
I appreciate you asking that. And yeah, Ariel, I have some time. Thank you. What are you thinking?
Great. Well, it's just the other day when I was trying to, when I had my treatment and I wasn't hearing back from you, there wasn't communication from you about whether you were going to be coming and showing up to my treatment. I was feeling really anxious. I felt anxious. I felt kind of fearful. I felt frustrated, and when you didn't communicate. And I was wondering if you could in the future just give me better communication around maybe a couple hours around whether you would be coming to the treatment, so I can know what to expect and I'd feel less anxious. So what did you hear me say?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ariel. So what I hear you saying is you had a lot of emotions. You were feeling frustrated, you were feeling sad, maybe you felt confused, you didn't know if I was going to your treatment or not. And as your primary caregiver, I mean, am I correct, Ariel? Am I understanding that?
Yes, you have that so far, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
I first want to say, if it's okay, I'm really sorry about that. I feel like I let you down a little bit, and I appreciate that you had the courage to share how you're feeling. And I hear you asking that in the future, you might like me to go, and you'd also like to know if I'm going to be there or not. And is that right, Ariel?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
So I just want to say that I'm sorry. And I think what you're saying is completely fair. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. So thank you for validating how I feel. It felt really nice to hear that. And so are you okay with the solution of being in better communication? We can do that either through text or calling. And I know that you're not always going to be able to make every appointment and treatment. So I'm not necessarily expecting that at all. I just want to have that communication and support of knowing. So is that
Yeah.
something that feels like a fair request?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as we've talked about in the past, I think a big part of being in a couple is showing up for your partner and prioritizing them. So I'm going to commit to doing a better job. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And so as you all are listening to this, maybe it would be good to hear and the Q&A part, kind of how that felt for you to hear that. I know that it was a very kind of almost scripted, but just natural for us to do this because we are been in the field for so long. We know kind of how to use these iMessages and really listening and hearing, and we're not in emotional mode at all. So we know there's extra challenges that can happen, but it is a practice, just like anything else. It's a practice, like meditating, like staying centered and learning how to just validate and listen and not try to justify. So that was a really good example. And David added a couple extra things of even asking for forgiveness and showing that he understood that was something that was hurtful and that he didn't mean to, but he did ask for say he was sorry, which is a whole nother level, which is really kind of a nice validating to somebody's experience. So other things I would add about when you're working, especially with couples, is to really work on expressing your gratitude and appreciation for the other person when you can. That being in tune when the other person may be needing that reassurance in a stressful moment is kind of just key points. And that if you can identify each other's love languages as well, if you've heard of Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Languages of Love, and knowing how to fill each other's love tank. And I often will refer to that book, and my couples always say, "Oh yeah, we have that book. We never read it." And I always say, "Don't read the book. Don't need to read the whole book. Just read the sections after you take the assessment of what your primary love language is for your partner. And if it happens to be physical intimacy, of course, sometimes that can be something that shifts and changes because of treatment and recovery. So you have to maybe find other ways of really the act of touching and cuddling and expressing your feelings of gratitude and appreciation for that other person, and giving them reassurance in those stressful moments really is that essential piece to creating that safer bond and feeling like you matter in the relationship. And recognizing we all process information differently, stressful situations and our emotions are different, and it doesn't mean the person doesn't care. So really respect each other's pace, that sometimes one person may be quicker at processing and verbalizing and being able to talk about their feelings, and the other person may take a little more time. And if they're a little bit more quiet, to give them that little bit of time to still respond, and not assume that they're just checking out. So just kind of concluding my part, the traumatic experiences that you really have really allows for us to have those deeper connections with our loved ones, because it's through these shared experiences of facing these fears that we realize we're really not alone. And we have the capacity to carry the heavy load of our feelings of sadness, grief, fear, and shock, especially when we do it together. So with that, I wanted to give it back to you, David, because I think you have a slide you want to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ariel. And actually, so I'm going to do a quick. So actually, it was
share
Ariel who
screen
was kind
here.
enough to find this lovely slide.
This
And
is
so I'll read this, and you all can hopefully see it. Don't make yourself small for anyone. Be the awkward, funny, intelligent, beautiful little weirdo that you are. Don't hold back. Weird it out. So our hope today, and there's a lot on these topics. Ariel is quite an expert on emotionally focused therapy and helping people in trauma. I tried to put a few research-based books in the chat and some great apps that you can get for free or kind of nominal fees per month. But Ariel shared this insight. Don't make yourself small for anyone. Be the awkward, funny, intelligent, beautiful little weirdo that you are. Don't hold back. Weird it out. When we start caring for ourselves, when we start getting in touch with our own thoughts and emotions, we can learn to be more self-confident and more aware of what's going on for us in our environment, so we can be our authentic selves. And when you start being your authentic selves, then you start having authentic relationships. And when you have authentic relationships, that just creates a positive cycle where you start being the awkward, funny, intelligent, beautiful little weirdo that you are. So we're just really delighted to be here today. I'm super excited to be opening it up for questions and answers. And I think we've already got some comments in both the chat and the Q&A. And Natalie, you're welcome to jump in too, and we'll start asking answering your questions. Please feel free. One other thing I'd love to hear from y'all is we did a very brief kind of guided mindfulness exercise. Love to hear your thoughts on that. I always welcome feedback, positive or negative, it's all good. So I was wondering too how that guided exercise felt for you. I think we have some stuff in the Q&A in the chat. Natalie, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything.
Well, I think that, well, first of all, David and Ariel, it's so good to hear from you all. We haven't seen you in a few months, and it's nice to have a newcomer, Ariel. She did a great job, so thank you for all the information you shared with us. Let's just hit a few kind of broad questions, and you all can kind of fill in for us. So one of the questions really pertain to this individual doesn't have a partner. So they're defining their relationships in a larger sense, like family members and friends. And I think that's a really interesting position, right? As we go into the holidays, we are going to be more in a family or group setting. So they have found that communication can be a little tricky. Are there ways to navigate that type of conversation and communication around the holidays, bigger group setting? Are there any, they asked if there were any resources or books, but please, kind of take a very broad question, but go ahead.
Do you want to go first, Ariel, or me? Either way is great.
You can go ahead first.
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
If you have some.
Yeah, so a couple thoughts. The question is a great one. Thank you for that. Off the top of my head, I don't know of any books, although Natalie, but I have a lot of thoughts. And Natalie, I want to ask you a quick question. Forgive me, isn't the Texas Oncology Foundation, aren't you doing something related to the holidays and just as part of this series? Is that right?
Yes, so as part of this series, and I'm going to plug it at the end, of course, shameless plug, but this is a 3-week series. So next week, Katie Ozuna will be talking about setting healthy boundaries for the holidays. So definitely there probably is going to be a little overlap, but we will all learn something new. But please give us your perspective. I don't think you'll take away too much from that presentation.
Yeah, well, so yeah, all your speakers have a lot of great stuff to offer, and definitely check out the other talks in this series. I think that'll provide you with a wealth of information about how to handle the Texas Oncology Foundation that's coming up that Natalie just described will provide you with a wealth of good resources and techniques. A few quick thoughts, and I'll speak a little quickly because it's a great question, and I know there's other great questions, and Ariel has insights too. I would think about in any kind of communication, especially around the holidays. I think Ariel made this point. I would think about the environment that you're in. Like, you can't really see this, but this is my home office. I have pictures that my kids have drawn in the background, all my books. Like, this is my safe space. If I wanted a serious conversation, I would love it here, but that might not feel great to my partner to be in here. So you want a safe space for both people. You want to make sure that you have enough time. You want to, like both Ariel and I were talking about, You want to monitor your energy level, because when we get triggered by our environment, our brain starts to really burn energy, as does our body. You know, serious conversations can be uplifting and transformative, or they can drain us. It's okay to say that you're not ready to talk. That is okay. You can offer times for talking in the future. Everything that Ariel had to say about I statements, emotionally focused techniques, that was just amazing. The other thing is, one thing I would invite everyone to consider is two things. I think we're starting to get awareness in our society of the sometimes toxic positivity of the holidays. And I say that as a minister who loves the holidays. They can be great, or they can be pretty punishing. So be careful about how you approach the holidays. It's okay to say no. In fact, sometimes when you say no, you're giving a healthy model to others. It's okay to say no, because when you're saying no, we often say yes to something else. So I would definitely pace yourself. I would think about your energy level. And the other thing is, I think about your priorities. Is your priority to be a truth teller? Is your priority to get revenge? Is your priority to express anger? Is your priority to understand the relationship? Is your priority to just understand at all what's happening? Is your priority to deepen the connection with your partner? And then what's driving your thoughts and emotions? And meditation can be a helpful thing for that. So those are a few quick thoughts. Ariel, if there's anything you want to add.
Sure. I just want to say that with this question, I think it's a great question, because it is about navigating relationships. And a lot of what we, you know, the iMessages and things like that, you can use those same techniques with non-partners, with people that are just in your life, right? That you want to be able to say, hey, and the whole technique is really designed so that people are not creating a defensive response, right? You're trying not to attack them. You're not saying, hey, you're making me feel a certain way. When you do that, it's, you know, hey, can I share with you? I'm feeling a little this way. And it kind of keeps people on the, you know, off the defense and able to hear you a little bit better. And I know that can be tricky with people who are sensitive, or you have a certain kind of relationship with, especially, and with this question, there sounds like there's a lot of variability that, you know, kind of goes along with trying to navigate. So boundaries is something that they're going to, you know, the next talk is going to be talking about, which will be a really good, I think, topic with this. There's a book on boundaries. There's a couple books on boundaries that Townsend and Cloud have written. And they talk about boundaries in every kind of relationship and how to use those. When you are discussing, when you're trying to change your relationship with people, it is really tricky because there's this script that everybody is used to, right? And so with that script, I think I froze. I don't know if I froze up, but with that script, there's this kind of sense of like, you know, this is what I usually say, and this is what you usually say. And when things change in relationships, yeah, I think what I was basically saying is that there's definitely a script that's involved that everybody's comfortable with. And when you try and change that script as things change in your life, the other person is not going to be comfortable with that. So you're not doing anything wrong if it's uncomfortable when you are setting a boundary or trying to tell somebody what you need, there's no way you can do that in a way probably that the other person isn't going to be in some way upset. And so it's learning to really be comfortable with the short disruption within that relationship when you change the script, because you're forcing them to then know how to change their script. So it's learning how to be comfortable with that and recognizing if I'm doing and saying things the best way that I can, I'm using all of these tools, it still may be that the relationship is uncomfortable for a little while as I set my boundaries and tell them what I need. That's different. So.
Thank you. Oh, could I say one thing real quick, Natalie?
Yeah, please.
And Ariel, thank you so much. That was great. Real quick, thank you everybody who was putting stuff in the chat. And I think it was Lewis had a great suggestion. So I tried, and someone put in the Q&A too. I think that was Dawn in the Q&A. I posted a bunch of kind of research supported books in the chat and some apps, but I honestly was just pulling those from a flyer I sometimes use. Natalie, would it be okay? I know this is a little after fact for the talk. I apologize. Could I email like you or Kelly a
Yes.
flyer? Okay.
In fact, I was going to suggest it because we're getting a lot of comments and questions about the awesome resources that you put in the chat. So the good news, everybody, is that our chat is captured. So we can, David, if you could send those to Kelly and me, we can put together a handout. Kelly can get that distributed to everybody, and we will also add that to our resource section on our website. So
Great.
I'd love to plug that. We've got great resources on the Texas Oncology Foundation.org website. You can find archived webinars. You can find additional resources. So David and Ariel, I think that we are going to wrap up. I've got people heading off to a creative writing group in the next few minutes. We're so grateful to have you join us. Ariel, great job. Glad to have you. Now that we know you, you won't get away from us. David will tell you. We're going to be asking you to talk all the time. So quick reminder that we have the next session will be next Tuesday in our Guide to the Holidays 3-part series. So we will talk with Katie Ozuna on setting healthy boundaries during the holidays. I mentioned visiting our website. You can sign up for our ambassadors group if you're just looking to network and have some deeper connections. Anybody who participates in our webinars and Survive and Thrive virtual camps, all of our Survive and Thrive education, you're encouraged to check out the ambassadors group as well. So thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday. Thank you, David. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Thanks so much.